Hello, in the next edition of It's About Money, my guest will be Marianne Virgilio. She's a retired Senior Director of Gift Planning in Rochester, New York. And I'm delighted to have her as a guest because you'll hear more about giving in the community. Hello and welcome to another edition of It's About Money. I'm Nanette Nocan and thank you for joining us. Marianne Virgilio, thank you for being a guest at our show.
Oh, you're welcome. I appreciated the invitation.
And you've spent 47 years in the career of institutional advancement. Wow, that's a lot of years.
It is a lot of years.
You must have loved what you did.
I absolutely loved what I did. It gave me a chance to work with so many different people on behalf of many institutions, both outside Philadelphia and then here in the Rochester area. And it was good work to do.
That's terrific. So you studied current trends in the area of women in philanthropy and went on to develop a program for women both locally and nationally. And I'm looking forward to having you discuss your work and the importance of women in philanthropy. That seems to be a very big thing. Women are living longer, yes, and that's important. Now, before you retired, you worked in the field of institutional advancement. Tell us about your career.
Well, unexpectedly, I started this career right after graduating from Newman University outside Philadelphia. And I had gone there thinking that I was going to be an English major and then go on to teach high school. But along the way, I realized that teaching wasn't the right career for me. And I also became acquainted with the director of development and chaired my senior pledge drive as a student. And the director of development encouraged me to consider this career. He said, I think you have the personality for it and you have the skill set, and gave me an opportunity to go to a regional conference of other advancement professionals. And then what he knew, but at the time I didn't know, was there was an opening as an assistant director of development at my alma mater. And so I went through the interview process, and was hired. So I started there 2 months after I graduated. And I worked in that position for 4 years and then moved here to upstate New York to work at SUNY Brockport as alumni director and served a number of years there. Moved on and spent about 10 years in the Rochester social services community, and including some time at Villa of Hope and Cancer Action, but was very interested in getting back into higher education because it was a great setting for me to work in. So I did that. I worked at RIT, back at SUNY Brockport, and then for the last 17 years of my career, I was at the University of Rochester.
I see. Wow, that's quite a wonderful range of institutions to have worked in.
And not only that, but it was a great range of skills and experience in the field of advancement. And I used to tell colleagues at the U of R that I've done every kind of fundraising there is, and I've done it for a variety of types of organizations. And for me, it's always about trying to tell the story of that organization to people who are or who may be interested in supporting it so that it can go on and develop its programs and thus serve more people.
That's interesting. So tell me, what is planned giving and what is your part in it?
Okay. Planned giving is a specialized area of fundraising, and a short description would be to help individuals make a gift with the best asset at the time that's right for them and for a purpose that they truly care about. And so when I went to the University of Rochester after those other positions, I had gradually been refining my career, as it were, to focus on working with individuals, and planned giving provided the opportunity to do that. So first off, it was a question of building a portfolio of individuals that I could work with. And the thing about planned giving for the university is that it works with, our office would work with all segments of the university. So in the same day, I could be speaking to someone about the Memorial Art Gallery, and later in the day about the College of Engineering. And so it gave me a broad understanding of the university, and then also introduced me to just such a varied number of individuals from different careers and different interests. And what I would do is usually perhaps they would respond to one of our outreach efforts, a newsletter or an email or whatever, or they may simply call the office and say, I'd like to include the university in my will. How do I go about doing that? And it was never for me a question of just, oh, well, here's what you do and here's where you send the information and that's it. But it opened the door to being able to sit down and talk with that person and get to know them better and understand what it is they wanted to accomplish, and then talk with them about some of the ways in which they could do that, whether it was a life income gift or using their will and final plans, to include support of the university, oftentimes a combination of both.
I see. That's great. So really trying to meet their own personal financial needs, whether as a legacy or current living needs.
Yes. One of the things about fundraising is, especially when you're talking about annual fundraising, it tends to be more transactional. So I might come and meet you in your office and ask you if you would make an annual gift to the university, to the program you care about. And it's a short meeting, and I say goodbye and go on to the next person. But with plan giving, I always felt as though I were sitting on the same side of the table as the individual who's interested in making a gift, and really working with them over a period of time to identify what they wanted to do and how they could do it.
Oh, that's great. It's really learning about understanding the donor, and then what is available from the university or the institution.
Right. Where is there a match?
Yeah,
right.
That's great. That's wonderful. Yes. And it's always, what I read somewhere, that man's biggest fear is extinction. So you're trying to make the connection so that their memory or their legacy is not extinct.
Yes. And these are good-hearted people. It's fond of saying, I did not leave a trail of broken arms behind me in terms of trying to convince someone to do this. It's that they oftentimes came to us or in some way expressed interest, and then we pursued that so that they could accomplish what was meaningful to them.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So I love about this country is that a lot of people are generous in terms of giving back.
Yes.
Just remember, for the reasons, many different reasons why they give back, but it's usually, what have you found is the reason why people would think about plan giving?
Mostly it's because they had an experience with the university. Oftentimes as a student, I worked with a lot of alumni. I also worked with parents and our friends in the community. But as you were saying earlier, you received significant financial support for your college studies, and that is the same thing for a lot of people who support any university or college, is that they realize that they were helped along the way and they would like to give back. They would like to do something to recognize, honor, respect the support and the institution that they studied at.
Sure. Yeah, it just gives a great feeling to be able to do that. It's not, and keep the cycle going, right? Help others as well. So, and for the institution, what's the importance of plan giving?
It's very important. And it depends. At the University of Rochester, I was happy to be part of a well-established and mature program. I've also been involved with helping to establish new programs in planned giving because it provides an understanding or knowledge for the university that there is this support that's going to come into its revenue stream at some point in time. There's no defined, date for that, and we always hate to see a donor pass on, but it's a comfort to know that they have left this world better because they've made a gift that includes support for future generations of students, our healthcare facilities, whatever that might be. So it's important because it does tend to be the gifts that are slightly larger than annual contributions. Oftentimes, a planned gift is going to establish an endowed fund, so that's going to go on as part of the endowment really forever, because that's the commitment that the university has, or any organization has, is in building an endowment. It is that you're not spending the principal of that, but you're investing it in such a way that it will provide support for the program that you've identified through all the years to come. And it does help the individual leave a legacy. And institutions recognize that legacy by either a named endowed fund or a name on a building or a name on a program, as well as oftentimes membership in a recognition society for those who've made similar plans.
Sure. Or endowing a position as well.
Yes,
right? Yes.
certainly. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And like we said, that it's just recognizing the meaning of or continuing the feeling of goodness that happened in their lives from years ago, or maybe currently or recently, but making that gift, a planned gift, is a continuation of that goodness that happened.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I had the opportunity, and it was a wonderful opportunity in the last 17 years of my work, to work with the 50th year reunion class each year. And planned giving was an important part of the work with those classes, because a benchmark time in your life, such as celebrating a 50th reunion, is often a time when people will stop and take a look back at what happened in their life, what was important to them in their life, and oftentimes will come to the conclusion that this anniversary year, this reunion, is a good time for me to do something that will help the university or the organization in ways that beyond what an annual gift can often do.
Sure, that's great. And I understand too that you've studied the current trends in women in philanthropy. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. I never had really even thought about it as a field of study or something to take a closer look at until I had come to the University of Rochester. And early on in my tenure there, there was a staff meeting, and we were a small staff, but I was the only woman in a group of 3. And the director of our program and the man who had hired me, Jack Krekel, said, I've been hearing a little bit more and more about trends in women's giving. He would be part of a network of individuals who were working at different colleges, universities, and other organizations around the country. And he said, I think maybe we should take a look at this as a possibility for us. So I looked at one side and there's a man, and the other side and there's a man. And I said, well, I guess I'll do it. But it was a wonderful, wonderful learning experience. And there's a great organization here in the United States. It's called the Women's Philanthropy Institute, and it's affiliated with the Lilly School of Philanthropy at Indiana University, Purdue. It's in Indianapolis, and they've become pretty much the major organization that's both doing the research on trends in women's philanthropy, as well as being a storehouse of information from the earliest days of taking a look at this. And the thing is that the earliest days go way back in the history of this country, because women, although they might have been silent in matters of finance and household spending, were the ones who started many of our social service and important organizations in our communities across the country. So women have been philanthropic, whether it's been by virtue of encouraging support of organizations or the establishment of them and then the volunteer work for them. So it's a rich history. What's become more noticeable and apparent in the last 30 years or so is that as more women have gone on to college, have a career of their own, and are making the money of their own, then they are feeling more empowered to make contributions in their own name and with their resources.
Sure. A lot of women are, traditionally anyway, I don't know how that trend will change, are outliving the men in a couple, in a traditional couple. So,
right. Yeah. And the other thing is women will typically inherit wealth twice in their life. They will probably inherit wealth from their parents, and then again, if they're married, will probably outlive their spouse. So it ends up that at a point in time, many women are in control of an amount of wealth that they never anticipated they would be. And the projections for what women control now, as the last thing I read, was about $5 trillion in this country that's in the control of women, and that number will only grow as some of these life characteristics in terms of inheritance continue, and as they continue to excel and build careers and earn on their own in a way they hadn't 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever it might be.
That's great. We're going to take a quick break. Marian, Virgilio, it's been great conversation. We'll be right back. It's about money.
Who doesn't want a shiny new electronic device? Sure, back home there's a garage or a basement full of old electronics that we don't talk about. But old electronics aren't garbage, and they're not useless. They're full of parts and materials that can be recycled into new electronics or donated to some wonderful causes. That flip phone and old computer can still live on. Recycling electronics is the green thing to do. It's the right thing to do, and it's so easy. Log on to greenergadgets.org and enter your zip code to find the recycling center nearest you.
And we're back. I'm Nanette Nokan. It's about money, and we have the great pleasure of talking with Marian Virgilio. Marian, thanks again for being here.
I'm happy to be here.
So we're talking about women in philanthropy and the trends that are going on. And tell us about the program that you developed based on your findings about trends in women in philanthropy.
Well, because I was a member of the planned giving staff, it was important to develop the program as we eventually did in a way that would appeal to women who either singly or with their spouse had been supporting the university, oftentimes through annual giving or leadership annual giving, and to present them with information and education about both programs at the university that may interest them, but also about how women can utilize their financial resources to accomplish some of their goals in relationship to an organization that they're involved with, the university, and perhaps make a larger contribution than what they might have expected they could, just because they might not have known about what those options are. So what we decided to do was we would appeal to women who were already supporting the university, and we decided to identify a couple of major cities for the university where we had women affiliated either by virtue of having studied or supporting in some way the University of Rochester. And I think that a key thing for the program that we developed was we involved trustee level women in being our partners in the different regions where we established these programs. So we really focused our programs in New York City, in the Los Angeles, Silicon Valley area, and then in Rochester. And in every case, we had one or two trustees who were our partners and who would help us plan the event, review the materials, and then have a role to play as kind of hosting our events each time in each of those cities, and also being the face of and the leadership face of the effort across the country.
Oh, that's great. And also to help tell the story. You started out by saying it helped develop the story for the institution.
Exactly, right.
That's great.
Yes.
That's great. I think that's, I mean, to tell the story, I think, is the reason why people give to an institution, right? Without the story, it's just a transaction.
Right. And for women, it is, there's been research on how women give, what motivates women, how is that different from what might motivate men. And then more and more looking into younger women versus middle-aged versus older women, the generational issues that might come for someone who was part of the greatest generation versus the baby boomer years and then on to millennials. But for women, the first motivating factor, or the most important motivating factor, often is they know the organization. They've volunteered with the organization in the past in some way, or they were served by the organization, or someone in their family, children, whomever has been served by that organization. And then oftentimes their involvement as a client or a patient turns into involvement as a volunteer, and then also involvement as a donor, probably at an annual giving level, and then it leads them into a richer relationship with the organization because they've become involved and knowledgeable and then they're more likely to consider what further they could be doing. And so I think in general, when we talk about organizations and fundraising, we talk about asking people to share their time, talent, and treasure. With women, a fourth factor in that is to share their network. So a woman who is engaged with an organization, oftentimes as a volunteer, maybe a leading volunteer, if approached and told about what a difference it can make if she talks to her friends, or she talks to her network, or invites members of her network to just come over for a coffee hour or an evening, get together and learn about the organization. And so that's another way of enlarging where and how the organization can reach out to more women.
No, that's great. That's great. Yeah, yes, you're right. Volunteering, a lot of non-for-profit, that's what you say, the time, talent, treasure, but now you got to bring in the network or the team.
Right, and it's what women do anyway.
Sure,
and
yes,
so
naturally, right?
Yes,
so
naturally.
Yeah, and it's nice to be able to bring your people in to learn about it. And I always say that it's hard to ask people for contribution unless they're engaged, and often it's better when they're passionate about what they're giving, right? So
absolutely.
Easier to make that donation. So how did you go about expanding your program, not just locally but nationally? You talked about engaging the trustees in the different locations. I think that's brilliant.
And it really worked very well. And we identified, obviously, those cities because they are significant areas with population related to the university, whether it be alumni or friends or faculty or meriti, whatever the case might be. And then in working with our volunteer leaders in those areas, they could advise us on what might be the best approach, or what might be the best venue for someplace, or what might be a venue that would be attractive and encourage people to come, if for no other reason than visiting the venue. But then, we could engage them in the conversation, that we wanted. But also, our trustee level leaders were women who knew the university well and could help us define what might be the best topic for a program in their area. We have such a wide range of opportunities at the university and programs, and so many great faculty members and administrators that, we would come up with a list of ideas from people perhaps that we had heard speak or have had the chance to work with, but we would vet that with them. And so they really helped guide the program in terms of what kinds of things were we talking about doing and who might be the best choice at a given time to deliver a program. That's one of the things I did with Kate Cerulli, who's been on your program in the past. And as the leader of the Susan B. Anthony Center on the university's campus, as well as her work in interpersonal violence and interventions, she was a great speaker and could talk about, what's happening for women at the University of Rochester now. But we had deans, and we purposefully kept the groups small because we wanted them to be intimate. And we wanted it to be a conversation, and that's how we always described it, that we were inviting these people to join us in a conversation about the university. In some cases, we brought in speakers from outside the university who may have had a specialization that was pertinent to the group. So for instance, we had an attorney from a Boston firm who has been active in this field of women's philanthropy, and she came in and talked about planning for women, and she talked about being at the table. The analogy she used was when you're on a plane and perhaps you have children with you, and before you take off, they run their messages, and part of that message is, if for some reason we have a problem and the air masks fall down, put your own mask on first before you help anybody else. And so the idea to try and encourage women to think more about that financial aspect of their life was to say, be at the table, that she has run into, and I experienced myself, so many instances where the woman had no inkling of what was happening with the finances for the family, and either had to take it on suddenly because of the death of a spouse or serious illness. But if you're involved in the conversations going along. And this includes the conversations with any of the advisors, financial advisors, attorneys, bankers, trust officers, you know, that the woman has a better idea and can feel more comfortable in both voicing her opinion on what might be the best road for the family or for the future.
Got it. That's great. That's great. So like you said, keep it intimate.
Yes.
And keep, so it's not just a social aspect of a gathering, but also the educational piece of it.
Right.
Right. So
Yep.
that might be unique for women more than men.
Yes.
Okay. See, that's great.
And it was well accepted, and we could track over time just by looking at the giving by the women who participated in the program, that giving increased considerably over a period of years following when they might have participated in one of the programs.
Oh, very nice. That's beautiful. So in retirement, you continue to volunteer.
Yes.
What significance does continuing to serve the community have for you?
It's extremely important to me. I've spent my whole life and career working in the nonprofit sector, and as my husband and I were approaching retirement, I said, I can't just go retire somewhere warm and sunny and sit at the pool. It's not who I am. And we talked long and hard about what did retirement mean for us. And for me, it definitely meant being involved with various community organizations to one extent or another. Before I retired, I had a good conversation with someone you may know from the community, Dan Myers, who was long involved in fundraising and supporting the organizations around our community. And he had preceded me in retirement, and he'd been a mentor to me over the course of my career here. But he said, my suggestion is you take at least the first year and just do nothing, you know, or just relax, you know, read the books or do the gardening or whatever, before making any, jumping into any commitments. And he said, and then you kind of feel out what you might want to do, pick and choose. And so I followed his advice, and it was good advice. Unfortunately, I might have jumped into a couple too many things right now, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So, and it's always been a way to give back. So, for instance, I serve on the foundation for Seymour Library in Brockport. When I was younger and my children were younger, I served the library for a period of years as a trustee. And this time was encouraged to serve on the foundation. So it's that form of giving back, and it's always been important to me.
That's great. Yeah, it's just, it's the feeling of just giving back is amazing, right? Just kind of nicer to be able to end the days to just kind of knowing that you were able to help the community, and it's just a good feeling. It's hard to feel down when you know you've helped other people. Right?
Yes. And it's interesting for me as someone who is often involved in the administration or the design and implementation of programs. I really don't seriously want to pursue so much board level membership and activities as hands-on. You know, it's that I would prefer to be involved with actually providing the service. So my husband and I both do Meals on Wheels in our community, and it's very satisfying. You know, it's almost like it shouldn't feel so good because you're giving, you know, you're giving your time and energy, but it does feel good because people are appreciative of what you do to help them out.
That's great. Marian Virgilio, what a pleasure to have had you in my show. You're a treasure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I love this community, and I love the people in it.
Yeah, it shows. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, our guests, our viewers, for being here and watching us. Until next time, I'm Nanette Nocon. It's About Money.